So our question is, what would happen if we canceled Fashion Week? And through this project, we look at and scrutinize the effects of Fashion Week on the environment while also visualizing what the future of fashion could look like if we canceled the traditional Fashion Week. And the fashion and textile industry, which we want to emphasize, is one of the most polluting in the world and has been the center of criticism for some time, especially when discussing climate change. The fashion industry's CO2 emissions are projected to increase by more than 60% to 2.8 billion tons in the next 10 years. And right now, the fashion industry emits 10% of greenhouse gases and is in the top most polluting industries next to oil, agriculture, transportation, livestock, and heat and electricity. Because of this, you cannot separate this impact on the environment from the current pandemic that we're facing. And the public health crisis and climate crisis are inextricably linked, especially in our highly connected world. Climate change alters the way we relate to the earth and other species who inhabit this. So in turn, this affects our health and our risk for infections by creating the conditions that make the spread of infectious diseases and viruses more favorable. And according to the Harvard School of Public Health, many root causes of climate change increases the risk of pandemics. So during the onset of the pandemic, the entire fashion industry began questioning just how we would cope within this industry that is entirely based off of visual and physical and material appeal. And the COVID-19 pandemic shed a larger light on the unsustainable practices and business models across the fashion industry. And this was emphasized and highlighted by Niall Murphy, who's the CEO and co-founder of Everything, who says, as we've seen this crisis unfold, the issues of resilience or lack thereof and various aspects of the supply chain have come to the forefront within both the fashion and apparel space.
When we are talking about the fashion industry, one of the most important topics we need to talk about is Fashion Week, because Fashion Week is always been one of the biggest events in the fashion industry. Fashion Week acts as a primary medium that designers crystallize and convey their creative visions, which later inform the products that fill stores and the advertising campaign that support them, as well as other creative content from window displays to editorial shoot that appear in the magazines. An article from Business of Fashion reminds us that these events depend on the gathering the right kind of people, including editors, buyers, and influencers, which helps capture and transmit social, cultural, and emotional value that turns bags and dresses into objects of desire. The fashion industry previously depends on the Fashion Week to decide trends, but over time in a more digital world, traditional Fashion Week has been argued that it's not necessary. One of the biggest arguments is in regard to the sustainability of fashion. A staple event within the fashion system is bad for climate as it stands. So we research about what sustainability related program Fashion Week has right now. We found some reports and statistics saying that how much CO2 emission from Fashion Week. We found out the number is about 241,000 tons. It's enough power to run Times Square for 58 years. When Fashion Week happened, like having the show is not only reason causing the emission of a lot of CO2. There are a lot of journalists and buyers came from all over the world by airplanes, and it's also counted as a CO2 emission from Fashion Week. And also, as you can see on the right side of the slide, there's a photo of Extinction Rebellion protesting Fashion Week. We think more and more people start thinking that Fashion Week should be changed in many aspects in terms of the sustainability. Based on these facts, we came up with these two important research questions. First one is that, can Fashion Week ever be sustainable? There are a lot of aspects causing Fashion Week not sustainable. Is it because of industry or is it because of the consumers? Second one is related to the situation right now. Because of COVID-19, social distance has become new normal these days. And under this situation, it's impossible to have a Fashion Week like we used to have. So then what's gonna Fashion Week look like after COVID-19 happened? We're going to talk about solution and details later, but our opinions based on our research is we need some top to bottom solution to solve this problem. We need to change the fashion week first to change the tired system of how fashion industry runs.
I'm afraid we can't hear you, Hasani. No sound. Yeah, sorry. No? Oh, strange.
Okay,
Yeah?
can you hear me
Yes.
now? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
So
Good.
throughout this project, we questioned, could Fashion Week continue in a way that's more sustainable for the environment as well as safe during the COVID-19 era? We also questioned, is enough pressure being placed on leaders to make change? During our research, we came to one solution, and it was to digitize all of Fashion Week. And we created this website to show just what that would look like. So during this version of Fashion Week, the people we highlighted earlier, like buyers, editors, and influencers, would attend the Fashion Week online from a central website. In this version of Fashion Week, it gets rid of the traditional fashion calendar and holds a Fashion Week at the beginning and middle of the year, condensing the big participating cities into one area. Instead of physical samples, all garments are made using a 3D software and modeled by 3D models. You can see the shows, see lookbooks of designer collections, and meet designers. And everything is created in realistic 3D design to capture the look of clothing. We created these articles of clothing in a software named Clovid 3D, just to show exactly what that would look like. Right now, 3D and 4D technology has taken over. So to give attendees an even more realistic experience, Digital Fashion Week also comes in app format, and which is available on all Android and Apple devices. And Fashion Week would hope to work with app developers from companies developing multi-touch haptic technology like Canvas to bring the feeling of material texture so people are able to feel how the material and the design would feel. We also offer behind the scenes look from designers and shows. So how does this help? Conventional fashion production wastes between 15 to 25% of cloth needed to make a garment. And during Fashion Week, like stated before, 241,000 tons of CO2 is emitted each year due to air travel, accommodation, traveling to venues, and transporting collections. Within Digital Fashion Week, fabric waste is completely eliminated because all the garments are made on 3D software. With this zero waste design strategy and technology, the issue is handled in the design stage rather than the making stage, and clothing isn't produced until the purchase from buyers. It also completely cuts down on traveling impacts because it's only online. And more obviously, Digital Fashion Week prevents the spread of COVID-19 and emphasizes social distancing practices. On top of that, with Digital Fashion Week, we plan to slow down the fashion cycle, which is one of the bigger points to discuss. Right now, the fashion cycle is about 5 steps, starting with inspiration and design concept, moving to product development, trade shows and sales, later bulk production, and then finally retail sales. With the popularity of fast fashion, the cycle has completely sped up, leaving the fashion calendar more restrictive for designers, while fueling overconsumption and waste. We want to leave the traditional fashion calendar, increasing flexibility in production time and development, as well as stop the waste that happens during Fashion Week.
As you can see from our presentation, Digital Fashion Week has a lot of possibilities to solve current problems Fashion Week has. We understand that traditional Fashion Week used to play a very important role for fashion industry, buyers and designers and influencers, but it is also a fact that traditional Fashion Week built tired system and cycle of how fashion industry works, which causing problem, especially for the environment. And also because of COVID-19, our way of living radically changed. It is not safe to gathering a lot of people in one place anymore. So we think that Fashion Week also needs to consider to change in terms of this too. So we reach out to the conclusion that do we really need to keep holding traditional fashion week even you sacrifice people's health and the environment on Earth? So we think that it's time to think about alternative ways to present designers' work and how industry runs. We believe that Digital Fashion Week is one of the options to change the current situation of the fashion industry. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your presentation, Hasani and Yoshinori. So we have some time for questions and comments.
Could I?
Questions and comments.
Yes. Can I?
Yes, sure, absolutely. Yes. Yes, I can
thank
hear
you. No, there's troubles with sound, so I'm not sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for this very interesting project and idea. And I had a question. In one of the critics regarding the traditional fashion week was the body size of the models, all the discussions about their body shape, etc. So do you plan in this digital plan somehow to apply also various types of body shapes and maybe bring somehow extra ideas how you can now bring more variety of bodies, like presenting them?
Yeah, of course. With Digital Fashion Week, the issue or the thing that we have, it's like all the models are 3D designed. So in that way, you're able to create models who look like people who would be wearing your designs, like look like real people, look like people we see in the world.
More realistic shapes.
Shapes. Yeah, bigger body shapes, people who are disabled, people like you have that ability at this point because you're able to not just like, you're not creating off of models that are being picked, hand selected to you by a modeling agency. The world is a little more open for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are some comments. Yes, comment from Hazel Clark. Also great pairing of ideas and experience from a graduate fashion designer and a graduate fashion studies student. Yes, theory and practice go hand in hand with each other. So that's great, indeed. Interesting collaboration, guys. Thank you so much. Any questions, comments? Comments mostly. Oh, yes. Emma Lewis.
I was wondering about kind of, because there was a one Granary article not like 2 seasons ago kind of about this that I was in, and this is like kind of half a comment, half a question. I think there's like a bit of the digitalization of the fashion sphere, I think, takes away from the very real people that could be a part of the sustainable process, and maybe instead of digital models, to have real people that are being paid for their work properly, maybe having like decentralized fashion shows and kind of working with people in their locations rather than shipping models all over the world, and then ensuring that there's a real diversity, genuinely paying like differently abled people or like just any type of model, rather than using like a bot when mainstream fashion still isn't paying most people for their labor.
Guys, I hope you caught the question, because my end, the connection wasn't very good.
Like, I think a sustainability in terms of real people might be more important before it. Okay.
Did you really hear the question? Did you catch it? Because my end, the connection was really bad.
Yeah, I caught most of it, and I wanted to comment and I completely agree with you. Our thought process with digitizing Fashion Week was more in terms of reducing the waste created in the designing process and in the creating process of clothing during Fashion Week. But I completely agree with you. Like, one of the bigger steps first that the fashion industry, or one big step that the fashion industry needs to acknowledge first, is their barrier to access to a lot of different bodies and people. And I agree with you 100% on that. But for this, we were just focused on creating a solution where there would be zero waste within Fashion Week.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, there are some comments in yes, in our chat box. Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your presentation. So yes, let's see how the world will change.